Good morning, Dr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Never been better.
You looking sharp this morning?
Yeah, I got the Trey Gowdy thing going on with the hair. You like
Very
that?
nice, very nice. I used to see him quite a lot when I worked up on the Hill because I was for a time, the Bureau's representative to Congress for Benghazi, and he was running the Benghazi investigation. So spent quite a lot of time as a fly on the wall in meeting rooms with him.
What are your thoughts?
There was him, and then the ranking member was a Democrat from Baltimore who has since passed. I found the ranking member to be much more personable and friendly. I think his name is Elijah Cummings. Just one off. I ended up in an elevator with him a couple of times, just chit chat, and just was a really friendly guy. Gowdy was an absolute pit bull in the rooms that he was in. He was under marching orders to keep the Benghazi investigation alive, so that Hillary had to deal with it in the election run up, and he did it very, very well. He was less personable. I was in a room one time. There was probably, I may have told you this, there were probably 15, 20 people in the room. And I was the only one who wasn't an attorney. He kept banging the table, and my boss's boss was there that day, and he was banging the table. I used to be a prosecutor, in South Carolina. And my boss's boss had been an AUSA, an assistant United States attorney in the Eastern District of New York, used to go after, real deal, no lie, mafioso. And he just kind of looked at Gowdy and said, look, I used to be a prosecutor too. Everybody in this room is an attorney. Can we just get back to the topic at hand? And so he would oftentimes, in my presence at least, lose sight of the fact that there were no cameras in the room. And once you got him off that sort of bully pulpit, then he was fine. But man, when he was on the, on a tear about Benghazi and Hillary and, man, I would not want to have been cross-examined by him on a stand. I'll tell you that much.
No.
Yeah, very sincere fellow, very passionate fellow, and intelligent, very intelligent.
Oh, so if you're joining us today, we're going to be talking about a couple different topics that are going on this morning that I have curated for your pleasure. And one of them is going to be Trump's cabinet picks. And I preface that because I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have some job.
Yeah, I would. I think he's been in the private sector since he left Congress. Like many of them do, they leave Congress, they go put their name on the masthead of a pre-existing high-end law firm, make a boatload of money, and then come back to the Beltway.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me either.
All right, let's welcome folks onto the show. We got Razmik on, Jay Fujimoto out there in Hawaii. It's an early morning, sir, for you. Will Rhodes is on from Missouri, coin number 2269. Don Bothwell, coin number 2270. And we got Tony. We got Johnny King. Thank you so much for joining us. Got a relatively quick show, but I want to get some rapid fire stuff here for Dr. Fuller to discuss with us. We'll start with the Wall Street Journal this morning. I think it came out at 5:20 Eastern time. President Biden has for the first time authorized Ukrainian forces to use Western-made long-range weapons to strike inside Russia, allowing Kiev to, quote, better defend itself against Russia. What are your thoughts on that?
It feels like we're creeping into a wider conflict. We've got North Korean troops on the ground up there now, by all accounts, getting smacked around a little bit. I don't think there'll be any kind of a global threat, but it is getting them combat experience, and it does signal a widening of the war, allowing the Ukraine to use Western-made weapons to strike inside, or that are capable of striking inside Russia, is another kind of creeping step forward in that direction. I mean, look, as well or better than I do that, best defense is good offense. If you're in a war and you're giving your opponent a safe haven, like we did in Vietnam, we wouldn't strike ostensibly we wouldn't strike into Laos. In Afghanistan, ostensibly we wouldn't strike into Pakistan. Things like that. It's a bad idea, right? Somebody gets across an imaginary line on the ground and yells "Ali Ali oxen free" and whatever the local patois is, and you can't shoot them. That's a formula for disaster. So from a purely military point of view, I understand the frustration, the desire to strike deep into, and not even deep into Russia, just strike their log bases, strike their staging areas. I get that. But you have to be cognizant of the fact that you're creeping towards a wider war. And at some point, Putin's going to say, there's been enough Western interference that now maybe I'm going to smack somebody inside 50 miles inside of Poland. And now we have a real problem. Now we have a real problem, which we've all been worried about since the first shot rang out there. And I can't help but wonder about the timing, right? I mean, Biden knows he's out the door. He knows this is going to be somebody else's problem here shortly. And I remember I worked with the 11th ACR in Germany for a while, and there was a big sign on the wall in the regimental offices that had a picture of a scout, American scout, just hauling ass going one direction, and he kind of hits the main line of defense of a bunch of infantry guys, and he's being chased by a bunch of Russian T-72s, because that's how old this is. Mm-hmm. And he's just screaming over his shoulder, "It's your problem now!" And they, the scouts found him, and they're coming back. And I like to think that people in DC are not that cynical and not that short-sighted, but given what's been going on for the last 15 years, like you got to wonder, at least you got to wonder about the timing. They've held the line against this for 3 years now, saying don't do it, and now all of a sudden it's okay.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let's get to some comments here. Mark Hamilton is on. Derek is on out there in North Carolina. John Shriver. Good morning, John. Lots of my lovely bride, Miss Lisa, is on. Will Parker out there. Michael Gentili says Biden authorizing advanced weapons on his way out sure sounds like escalating on behalf of the military industrial interests, forcing Trump's hand. I 100% agree with that. And let's get to some of the other things here. So, quote, I think I pulled this off of Al Jazeera this morning. Departing U.S. President Joe Biden has taken one of the most provocative, uncalculated decisions of his administration, which risk catastrophic consequences, declaring the website of the Russian government newspaper. I can't even begin to pronounce that. Russian member of parliament, Leonid Sludzinski, head of the pro-Kremlin Liberal Democratic Party, predicted that the decision would, quote, inevitably lead to a serious escalation threatening serious consequences. Then we have another Russian senator says it's an unprecedented step toward World War III. Anger, yes, but no real surprise, he goes on to say. What do you think about that? You think that's just the normal crowing going on over there with the Putin loyalists?
Right. I mean, you've had Putin rattle sabers previously about, hey, we're a nuclear power and, existential threats will be met accordingly. So from that perspective, it's less of a, oh my God, it's not time to clutch our pearls yet. I mean, obviously the Russians aren't going to like that. And the first time Zelensky hits something inside of Russia, he's going to lose his mind. Mm-hmm. And he'll use it as a casus belli if that's what he wants to do, for a larger belli, if you will. I'll be interested to see if he maybe doesn't launch into Russia, but perhaps launches into one of the satellite states that are serving as logistical staging points for the Russians. Because then you don't have nearly as much of a severe reaction from the Russians as you might otherwise. Frankly, I have to give Zelensky some credit for being as restrained as he has been throughout this conflict in terms of striking over the borders and into Russia. That's you're taking a big beating. You're losing a lot of territory. You're losing a lot of people, losing a lot of material, a lot of money, and restraining yourselves from hitting the Russians where you could hurt them. That takes a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure involved. There's probably a lot of bakshish, as we call it in the Middle East, a lot of palm being metaphorically and probably literally greased to keep things under control. The Russians, of course, are going to be upset about this. They'll be more upset when things actually start exploding inside of Russia. It remains to be seen how they'll respond.
I always look at Lee's invasion into Pennsylvania as just a catastrophic mistake. Keep an army on the field like George Washington did. Keep maneuvering. Keep them intact, keep feeding them, keep arming them, and just stay the course. But once you do something like that, man, it could run away from you. So I think that's kind of where I fear this. Johnny King says it could be that Joe wants a nuke to go off to keep his family corruption secrets in Ukraine from getting out after he's gone. Will Parker said, I read over the weekend that Ukraine could build a nuclear weapon, including delivery in a matter of months. I think that's I don't know about that. Mark Riddell is on from Australia. I want to get to another comment here. So when Putin was asked about missiles, this is months ago, says, first, we will, of course, improve our air defense system. We will be destroying their missiles, President Putin said. Now, this isn't recent. This is, again, I think back in June. Second, we believe that if someone is thinking it is possible to supply such weapons to a war zone to strike our territory and create problems for us, why can't we supply our weapons of the same class to those regions around the world where they will target sensitive facilities of the countries that are doing this to Russia? And I think that speaks to the leader of Belarus, who was having this thing. He says, quote, I warn them, guys, be careful with those long-range missiles, Mr. Lavashenko said. Quote, the Houthis might come to Putin and ask for coastal weapon systems that can carry out terrifying strikes on ships. And if he gets his revenge on you for supplying long-range weapons to Zelensky by supplying them to Houthis with the Bastion missile system, what happens if an aircraft carrier is hit, a British or American one? What then? I think it's a great point.
That's a very great point. And it feeds right into what we were talking about before, and a concern for a widening of this conflict. I'd like to think nobody wants this. Certainly nobody that's actually going to be out there shooting at people and being shot at wants this. Political leaders being political leaders, they're less concerned. But it's a valid point. I mean, as soon as we do this, then what's to keep the Russians from shipping some new technology down to the North Koreans or the Houthis, or do what they did all throughout the Cold War and just start funding non-state actors all over the world? You know, $1 million to North Korea, not a lot of money. $1 million to an offshoot faction of the Houthis or an offshoot faction of Al Qaeda, that's impactful, and it makes a big difference, and they can do a lot of damage with that. So it's a valid threat, and we've opened the door for it.
Yes, we have, and that's what I worry about, because it's I got to think he couldn't wait 64 damn days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
why now?
Well, yeah, I don't know. And do you do that in consultation with the incoming president? I'd like to maybe not. I mean, maybe there's some cynical game where he's going to come in and change things around, change the table around it in a way that gets the Russians to come to the peace table. I don't know.
Look at Jeff's comment, man. There you go. Cuba's only 90 miles away. I think the effective range of HIMARS is like 140-ish, 150 miles maybe.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And Jeff's been to Cuba, as I understand it.
Yes, he has, as you have as well.
Yes, I have. Looks like Arizona. Bigger.
I have not made it to the armpit of the world just yet. I have no intention of going. If I ever end up there, I'll probably be getting waterboarded, not waterboarding anybody. Anyway, I want to talk about, so enough about HIMARS in World War III. Let's talk about Bucks County, PA. What in the hell is going on up there? Are you tracking that at all?
I am not. Bucks County, Pennsylvania. What? Oh, is this the Democrats
Counting illegal votes?
Yeah, I saw that. You sent something to me the other day, and I didn't do a deep dive on that afterwards.
I'm going to read to you. This is one of the most chilling things I've seen to come out of there. This is Bucks County Commissioner Diane Ellis Marsaglia. I have no idea how to pronounce that. She says, quote, I think we all know that precedent by a court doesn't matter anymore in this country. And she's, of course, a Democrat, said it last week. She said, quote, people violate laws anytime they want. So for me, if I violate this law, it's because I want a court to pay attention. There's nothing more important than counting votes, end quote. It just blows my mind.
Deliberately miscount them and admit to having done so that the courts can get involved.
It sounds like criminal action to me, Dr. Fuller.
Yeah, it does.
But I think this is the world this administration has created.
Well, you make a strong argument. I mean, it's hard to refute that. And remember the last time I was on, I talked about how I was surprised that Kamala Harris gave a concession speech because people are so used to fighting these things out in court. And that was the problem I started with the Gore-Bush campaign when that ended up getting to the Supreme Court. When you start making the Supreme Court and the courts in general the arbiters of your election process, it really casts significant doubt on your election process.
Right.
And, for having somebody like her in a position that she's in, do that and then admit to having done it publicly and then crowing about it, well, I want the courts involved. To me, that screams state police, go buckle her up.
Right.
You be careful what you wish for, like one of the viewers just wrote, okay, you want the courts involved? Well, let's talk about criminal malfeasance. Let's talk about abuse of power.
I have some stainless steel bracelets or one size fits all.
Right. And then the courts will work it out. And in 2 years from now, I'll tell you the same thing I used to tell the detainees down in Cuba. People are going to forget about you. You're still going to be locked up. Right? Your people around you, their lives are going to go on. You think you're going to be a martyr, and perhaps you will be for 6 months, tops. But if you think that you're going to somehow be the person that impacts democracy in the Western world, and that your name will go down in history as a result of it, you're sorely mistaken. And by the way, you're not paying attention to this sort of zeitgeist memory that we have in this country. As soon as Taylor Swift puts out another album, you'll be right off the front page. Beyonce trips and falls and breaks her ankle. No one's going to know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
If that's the hill you want to die on, go forth.
Yeah. Your jihad is over, homie.
That's right.
Like I said, there might be 6 dudes back in your village that will pour liquor out on your birthday every year till they're dead. But other than that, nobody gives a shit. Right. I love what Michael Gentility says. He says, laws mean nothing to the, quote, animal instinct of survival at any cost. Yeah, I'm going to post a sign at this game reserve that says, please don't eat the gazelles. The lions don't give a crap. This is survival for them. And I think that is what we're seeing here from the left, which goes back to, I'm with you, man. You and I were texting and, we're like, we're not going to see a concession anytime soon. This is going to be the courts. This is going to drag on, maybe all in way into 2025. So me, we're as shocked as anybody as to what we're seeing here. But again, I think this is, as I said the other day, I fear Greeks even when bringing gifts. I don't trust it.
Yeah, and I look at social media as being a big boost for people like this. I mean, a generation ago, someone does that in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. It might make local news. She might get arrested and sent off. Nobody in San Diego is going to know about it. Nobody's going to care about it. But now you get some wingnut with some sort of axe to grind, her being an example, but certainly not the only example. We got them all over the political map, all over the national and world stage. And they say something completely outlandish, completely outrageous. And a small percentage of the people that see it, hear about it, are going to agree, and they're going to be validated by it. And then you end up with, 5 or 10 people with an outsized impact due to social media crowing about this stuff. The vast majority of the country has decided, okay, this is who the next president's going to be, and we've all accepted it. We've moved on, but not her.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to fight. Okay.
Well, Johnny King, there's a couple different comments coming here, and thank you so much. Dr. Gordon Botson is on up there in Hawaii, Ohio. I'm sure Dr. Botson might not mind being in Hawaii this morning, but
right.
He's in Ohio, sir. Glad to have you on this morning, sir. He's coin number 1688. If you want to find out if becoming a coin member of our community is the right decision, please check out the links in today's show notes. If you want to pick up some of Dr. Fuller's books as well, he was talking about his time in Cuba earlier, and that is his award-winning book on empathy for the devil, his time interrogating terrorists for the United States government down in Gitmo, or the DOJ. I guess we.
Oh no, I was in Gitmo, and I think it was possibly we was under the auspices of DOD.
DOD, okay.
DOD, yeah, because it's their facility.
Ted says, if not for climate change, World War III would be concerning. LOL, madness. Johnny King says, do you think the 14th Amendment approach will gain any traction to keep Trump from taking office? I think I'm not going to put anything past him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure someone will try. Will it actually work? Probably not. And will it work in a timely fashion? Probably not. But you can always try, right? I mean, you can and your chances of losing in court are always greater than zero. They may approach zero, but you should keep this in mind if you ever end up pointing a weapon at somebody. Your chances of losing in court are always greater than zero, and your fate is up to somebody else. So, yes. I mean, could somebody file and try to run with it? Sure. I don't think it'll pass the constitutional smell test. Mm-hmm. But who's to say? I really don't know what's going to happen. I'm shocked and pleasantly shocked at how peaceful things have been since November 5th. But I'm cynical enough to be waiting for the shoe to drop. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Michael says, the administrative state has a couple months to muster the Kavanaugh era true believers to take a shot at nominees during confirmation hearings, which is why I hope they use recess appointments if he can get that done, because let's get them in there and let's start moving the needle, and then we can kick the can down the road as much as we can before they do have to get Senate confirmation. Because if not, he's exactly right. It's going to be a muddy fight all the frickin' way.
You've really got to be careful about the precedent setting. I mean, the Democrats seem to have forgotten that over the last few years. But okay, if you fight every single fight, every single appointment, it's going to be a colossal waste of time. You will slow things down, no doubt about it. But you'll set the precedent where, well, next time you're in office, guess what's going to happen?
Right.
Especially if you don't own the Congress. If the Congress is Republican and you play this game now. I mean, a generation ago, 2 generations ago, the president got the cabinet he wanted.
100%. Yeah.
He got the cabinet he wanted. Well, it was really a rubber stamp. Now we've kind of progressed to a point where, every now and then we're just going to dig our heels in and fight. And you don't tend to win, but you fight over this guy. You throw mud in. You remember Kavanaugh's, confirmation hearing. You were on a date when you were 15 and you did this horrible thing. I did. Okay. So I think what we will see is a couple of the nominees will get fought. They'll dig in hard. Probably was it Gretz? How do you pronounce his last name?
Matt Getz. Yeah.
I think Getz is in for a fight.
It's it's a beautiful segue to really what I want to spend the last 30, 40 minutes with you. And that is, I want to go over and get your thoughts on some of this. White House Chief of Staff, first woman ever, Susie Wiles, looks like a solid pick. She's ran a fantastic campaign for Trump. Trump was a pariah, dead man walking. I mean, he was gone. And then he's not. And the phoenix that rose from the ashes has a lot to do with Susie Wiles. So I think she'll be a fantastic pick. I want to get into a pick that really hasn't come down yet. And I'm only going to talk about a few of these. One of them hasn't been made, but I hope it's going to be made. And that's Kash Patel as FBI director. Now, the left-leaning media, the New Republic says, quote, this unqualified MAGA addict might become Trump's FBI director. Mediaite says ex-FBI agent tells CNN Kash Patel will do, quote, massive damage as director. Huffington Post says ex-FBI agent says this Trump loyalist would be extremely, extremely dangerous pick to lead the agency. I hear stuff like that and I go, yeah, that's the right guy. What do you think?
Well, I saw the interview he did with
Sean Ryan.
That was a pretty interesting interview. And I didn't agree with everything he had to say. I agreed with some of the things he had to say. I think you're going to have to, as we discussed last time, put in a reformer in there. You're going to have to put in somebody that's going to kick things around. And the man does have the experience inside the Beltway to do it. Am I going to agree with everything he does and says? Probably not. But, I worked for 4 different FBI directors while I was in. I didn't agree with any of them completely. Although Louis Freeh came the closest. But is he a bad choice? I don't know enough about him to say he is. Is he a good choice? I don't know enough about him to endorse him either. I think he is a solid choice. I'm a little concerned about his level of loyalty to Mr. Trump, simply because shh, Tony, don't say things like that.
I second the motion, Tony, by the way. T.C. Fuller for FBI director.
I think that, you want somebody that's divorced from that level of loyalty in that job.
Why do you say that?
Well, because it's too easy to weaponize the organization at that point.
Oh, like it's already been done.
Well, exactly. And we don't want that. I mean, the solution to it being weaponized on the left is not to weaponize it on the right. Mm-hmm. It's not. It may be satisfying, maybe emotionally fulfilling, but we can't do it.
I agree with you. And, you and I are almost always 100% on the same page with each other. But again, this is not weaponization. This is called accountability. And accountability for those that have broken the law and misused the law and weaponized the law is going to seem like a loyalist attack. And we have to make sure that it's not. We have to be very transparent with I mean, look at the damage Comey's done in those of his ilk.
And I'll agree with what you're saying in terms of accountability. I think that if you put in an obvious Trump loyalist into that position, a man with a public footprint that shows him to be firmly in Trump's camp, then you're going to have a harder time saying that his actions are accountability, not revenge, if that makes sense. Now, he has publicly stated things about accountability and wanting accountability, and I'm all for that. But because he has the reputation of being a Trump loyalist, I think that if he goes into an organization like the FBI and he does start rooting out corruption and holding people accountable, it's going to be very easy for the other side to paint that as revenge. Whereas if you get somebody that's a little bit more subtle, a little bit more of a gray man, who can honestly, hold himself out to saying, yeah, I supported Trump, but this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I bring to the table. And this is why he hired me. And he goes about the same actions. I think then you'll be in a little stronger position to say, look, this isn't revenge. This is accountability.
Well, let's talk about that, because some of the comments about Kash Patel is that he's not qualified. This is a guy, and I'm reading from his bio here, public defender in Florida for 8 years, first in the Miami-Dade County Public Defender's Office, and later as a federal public defender. As a public defender, he represented clients charged with felonies, including international drug trafficking, murder, firearms violation, bulk cash smuggling. 2014, he was hired as a trial attorney in the United States Department of Justice, National Security Division, where he was simultaneously served as legal liaison to JSOC. Patel was appointed senior counsel on counterterrorism with the House Select Committee on Intelligence. Very qualified, and if we position him that way, but they're going to show pictures of him wearing a MAGA hat. They're going to say, this guy's been to Mar-a-Lago, more times than
Right.
Callaway golf clubs. I mean,
and this is my point. And he has a rock solid background as a member of the Justice Department machine. His background in leadership positions is a little thinner. 10 years ago he was in AUSA. 12 years ago he was a public defender. So it's a fairly, I think it's fair to call it a meteoric rise that he's now looking at being the director of the FBI, or at least he's being bandied about as the potential director of the FBI. So there's a concern there, but again, like you said, it's going to be very easy for him to be painted out as a MAGA extremist, and we all know how bad those guys are.
They're a threat to democracy. That's, and I say that because that's what this administration has been very clear and unambiguous about. And Michael Gentile says, as far as the current administration's actors are concerned, every act of accountability will be proffered as reprisal. And he is 100% correct. And it can't be. I think it has to be outsiders like, and we'll get to some of the other picks here, because he hasn't even been, that name is Kash Patel has not been said for anything. People thought he might be the CIA director. I think it's better for him as the FBI, but we'll see. Time will tell. We'll come back to him. Let's talk about Marco Rubio, Dr. Fuller, for Secretary of State. Got any thoughts on that?
Well, he's certainly painted himself to be a hawk. You saw I'm assuming you saw his soundbite about the Houthis that's being, all the rage right now, that he wants to wipe them all out.
I did, yeah.
And for people that have fought terrorists, we're fine with that. Shoot them all in the face. I got no problem with that.
Yep.
Marco Rubio, it's interesting because his relationship with Trump is a study in political strange bedfellows, right?
I know.
These guys have gone back and forth for
little Marco.
Yeah. But he's a solid pick. I think he'll shore up the South, in Texas, even more into Trump's camp. He's an experienced guy, and there's nothing wrong with having a hawk in the Secretary of State. I mean, a lot of people forget Hillary Clinton was quite the hawk.
Absolutely.
I think all of her other issues around her tend to drown that out. But she was a no-joke hawk. And so having somebody like that in the Secretary of State position is not necessarily a bad thing. Rubio's young. He's vibrant. He's, he can get around. He's not going to be staggering up and down stairs. I mean, I don't have a particular problem with him as a shortlister for the Secretary of State position.
No, I don't either. And he's the pick, whether he gets, and I don't know how you would turn him down. First Latin American ever to be appointed Secretary of State. And of course you have Miss Wells, who's going to be the first female chief of staff. So, and it speaks to what Mr. Gentile is saying here. AP headline is Donald Trump Jr. says pushback against cabinet picks proves they're the disruptors that voters wanted. And that speaks also to what Tony says. Bongino is being floated for the United States Secret Service position, which would be another disruptor. And that's what we want, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the federal government, so you can't just go in and just start throwing Willie Pete grenades into every room in the house and expect it not to catch fire.
Right.
I think you have to be selective about how you do these things, and I don't think that the sole standard should be personal loyalty to Donald Trump. I don't, that's certainly going to be a factor. It has been for every president that's ever sat in that office. Bongino is a pretty polarizing figure, and he's an intelligent guy. No argument there. He's run for office before. I think he's run for House. I'm only familiar with his public persona on his show, and that can be very combative.
Right.
So I'll be interested to see if he ends up in the secretary's or in the director's position at the Secret Service, how that works. I mean, he knows the organization from the ground level, so he speaks the language. He knows the culture. It would be harder to hide things from a guy like that. I mean, it's just like when an NCO becomes an officer, as you well know, NCO comes along and tries to pull a fast one. You're like, I was doing that 10 years before you were in the Corps, pal. Don't try that with me. So I think there will be some of that. How effective he will be as the director of the entire organization, remains to be seen.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll get to Matt Gaetz in a second, but this is let's just go to Matt Gaetz here. What are your thoughts on this pick? One of my favorites, by the way.
Yeah, it's good. And again, if he was a lone guy, then I wouldn't be saying things like Willie Pete grenades in every room in the house. But given the timbre of the selections that we are aware of thus far, he fits right into that firmament. And if you were on the other side, you're going to have rightful concerns that, okay, this is going to be, earth shattering, paradigm shifting. His criminal background or criminal accusations in his background are concerning, but look, if this was the 70s, he wouldn't be in the running anymore.
Right.
But in a post-Clinton, post-Trump era where you actually have people, post-Nixon, where you've got people that are involved in criminal activity, real or imagined, and we overlook it to let them do the job, he's harder to get rid of, right? He's harder to say, well, we have concerns of moral turpitude. He can't serve. Well, that is largely gone the way of the dodo. So I think that the argument will be made. It will have to be dealt with, but I think it will be dealt with, and we'll move forward. Now, how's he going to do in the job? I think is a better question. And at least from what I've seen, he seems to be competent at his current job, right? I mean, it doesn't seem to be, setting the world on fire at the job, but he doesn't seem to be failing at it. He doesn't seem to be shirking his duties. So besides my general dislike for people that have difficulties in their past in serving in higher office, other than that personal issue, I don't see where the big problem is with the guy.
Well, what's the basis of we're tap dancing around what the allegation is that he had sex with a 17-year-old girl. And I think this allegation comes from the friend of the 17-year-old girl or something like that. And it's like, hashtag believe women, I guess, on some level. But at the same time, as an investigator and my brother as a prosecutor in the Coast Guard, we have many, many, many instances where vindictive females made false allegations in military courts. And, so I've seen the gender disparity be weaponized, especially in this era of the Me Too movement. If this comes out, oh my God, and the guy's guilty. Now he may be guilty. I have no idea. I don't have any inside baseball on whether the man is or not, but I've seen, guys destroyed over this kind of allegation. So in this era, I wouldn't put it past anybody, and if you've lived your life like a saint, they'll make shit up,
So the simple solution is to conduct the investigation.
Correct.
of course, these days, the process is the punishment in a lot of cases. So dragging him through it might be all the punishment that they expect to get. Nonetheless, if that allegation is out there, as you know from your own history, you've said it on this show numerous times, best disinfectant is sunlight.
Yes, sir.
If I'm him and you've made that allegation, fine. Investigate it.
Yes.
Send people out here, do the interviews, conduct the investigation. Let's go for it. Because I didn't do it, right? Here's my attorney. You talk to my attorney. I'm going to go about doing my part to run the country. And I'm with you. I've seen, I did crimes against children investigations for a decade in the Bureau. Seen allegations. I've had women swear up and down, nope, never happened. Well, the DNA evidence says it did happen.
Right.
So, it's not a matter of gender. It's just a matter of humanity. People lie,
true.
right?
True.
So, I shy away from the believe all women because you can't paint with that broad a brush. But I also shy away from the idea that, she's just a woman, she's lying. Okay, because you can't do that. Right? Yeah. So you just treat every case like a case, and you investigate it, and it'll come out. You sit a 17-year-old girl down in a room with a couple of professional investigators, you're getting the truth. You're absolutely going to. And apologies to all the 17-year-olds out there, but you're not as good at lying as you think you are. You're just not. And if you want to go take your T-ball skills up against the New York Yankees, you go right ahead. But it's not going to end the way you think it's going to end. So sit down and figure it out, right? Put some professionals on it, put a little money on it, and figure it out. And then problem solved.
Agreed.
Is that going to change the fact that the media is going to crow about it, and they're going to take sound bites out of it, and they're going to beat you up with those sound bites? No, not going to change that at all. But American politics these days is a contact sport. If you want to operate in that world, you're going to get hit.
100%, man. And Will Parker says liars knowingly making false accusations should receive the same punishment, if not double, as the accused after it's been rightly determined to be intentionally false. I 100% concur with that. Craig Holland over there in the UK is on. Says, good afternoon, Earthlings. Sorry I'm late. We're just happy to have you. Of course, it's morning here in the colonies, Craig, but I'll accept your good afternoon. My brother Jeff says there must be repercussions for false allegations. And I more often than not saw in the military, at least, in the not happening, which is not a deterrent. There has to be moral hazard. And I think that when you remove moral hazard, you just have more of these types of allegations. And again, the allegation could be true, right, Dr. Fuller?
It could be. And if it is, great, hammer him through the floor. Got no problem with that. I will tell you this, jury appeal on crimes like that with underage participants are inversely proportionate to the age. So the age of the victim is 17. The jury's not going to be nearly as upset as they would be if the victim was 7. And the 7-year-old victim is not going to stir the passions of the jury nearly as much as the 7-month-old victim. I've seen that over and over and over again. Nonetheless, the law is the law. If you cross the line, you cross the line. There you go. You got to draw a line somewhere.
And even if, it could be one of those states where the age of consent is 16 and therefore no crime is committed. But that's where the ethics violation could be, right? It may be not illegal, but it's ethically inappropriate.
Absolutely. And it's always struck me as odd. I've lived in several states where the age of consent is 18, but you can be tried as an adult for homicide at 12.
Wow.
That disconnect has always struck me as logically unsound, right? You can have the mental competence and capacity to premeditate a homicide at 12, but you can't decide who to sleep with at 17. It doesn't make sense to me, but such is the way our laws work.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole I'd love to go down. That is, we need a solid age of majority. I think in Mississippi, the age of majority is 21. Yet at 18, you can do all these other things. It's like, well, we need to have a national age of majority. At 18, the gate's open for you. Right. You have all the legal wherewithal of any other American citizen. But
I had cases where you had the age of consent in a given jurisdiction by the state law was 16. Bad guy's 30 taking pictures of 17-year-old girlfriend. Well, federal law says under 18 is a child. So 17 is a child, but 16 is the age of consent. And then you end up with a whole bunch of legal arguments back and forth.
How do those normally play out, if I may ask?
Generally speaking, unless there's some really egregious factors in my experience, was the state law was sort of the guiding factor. So if there's 16 is the age of consent, 17-year-olds allowing pictures to be made or sending pictures, it's just not going to be addressed on that statute. The issue that will be addressed is typically it's not one victim. If somebody's getting pictures or taking pictures of one 17-year-old, they're taking pictures of 20 or 30, and they're 15, they're 16, and it stacks up pretty quick. I never had a case fall apart because I had one victim, and that one victim fell into that category.
Okay. One of the things I thought about I knew that when I talked to you about, let's say, Kash Patel and the AG appointment and some of these other things, I thought about, let me think of it from his perspective. I mean, this is an institution you gave your formative adult years to. You obviously, you represent the FBI, the Bureau incredibly well. How would I feel if somebody's going to come and stomp in the Marine Corps mud puddle, right? And I have to look at it like I served under a lot of commandants in 23 years, and there was one of them, General Conway, who I think did some crappy things to the Marine Corps. And if he was the commandant and somebody was going to come in and restructure it after he destroyed a lot of it, then I'll say, yeah, okay, we're going to have somebody, because the damage that he has wrought in his 4 years is going to take a disruptor to bring the Marine Corps back to its core values. And I think that's kind of where I fall in on this Kash Patel.
Sure.
We're so far off course, man. We need somebody to chart a course back to the mission.
Right. And I agree with that philosophically. Absolutely. I think where, we may run into concerns, I think it appeals to extend your metaphor. You agree, okay, that we needed somebody to come in and disrupt things. Okay, T.C. Fuller's the guy that's going to come in. You might find yourself in a position, well, I agree we need that guy to come in. I don't know if Fuller's the right guy to come in and do that. We've all said for a generation, look, the U.S. political system needs help, and it needs to have somebody come in and kick over the apple cart and really stir things up. At least I know I've said that for a long time. Yeah. And then Trump shows up, and I'm like, I don't know if he's the right guy, right? Yeah. So that may be where I am with Patel. I just don't know enough about him to say yay or nay on him. But I have concerns about whoever does it, needs to come in and do it the right way. And it won't be easy. I'm sure whoever that person that eventually does it, whether it's him or someone else, is going to make mistakes, or at least mistakes from my perspective. And I now have somebody getting ready to knock on my door, and my dog's going to start. So this may be a good place for me to let you go, Rich.
Yeah. I know you got a planned event this morning, so that they're there a little earlier. Thank you for being on, Dr. Fuller. We'll continue this conversation another day.
I look forward to it, Rich. And I apologize. The dog knows that the fight's coming. She's ready.
That's right. We'll see you, buddy. All right, guys, that's all the time we had with Dr. Fuller this morning. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We have more cabinet picks to talk about. I could go all day on this because I think this is important. And I'll give credit to my good friend, Mr. Michael Gentile, who was on this morning. Back in 2015, he was calling Trump the disruptor that we needed. And I remember being like, the guy from The Apprentice? What are you talking about? The Art of the Deal guy? The real estate guy? And I didn't see it for what it is. He has proven to be a disruptor. And I like the cabinet picks that I see coming out of there. I don't really disagree with any of them so far. And I think that his appointment of these cabinet picks for people who have had the laws and these agencies weaponized against them to now come in and be the disruption, I think is a fantastic move. Dr. Bodson says, how about Hegseth? I think it's great. I haven't read any of his books, so I don't know too deep in his policy. Like many of us, I watched the Sean Ryan interview. I like what I'm hearing on Pete. So I think someone who knows the organization from the bottom up, who's had the DOD weaponized against him because he has some Christian crosses on his chest. And this is the guy we need, or so it would seem. I am looking forward to this cabinet. I think there's going to be a fight. If we can get recess appointments, that would probably be good. Of course, I'm abandoning bipartisanship this morning. So tomorrow night we will have Will Wood will be on. I'll put an event out about it, but Will Wood and I will be talking about some of the geopolitical stuff coming up in 2025 as far as to amateur folks can give you their thoughts and opinions on it. So I look forward to seeing you guys there tomorrow night, Tuesday, November the 19th, 7 o'clock Central Time. Join Will Wood and I. We'll have a bourbon and have a little conversation on economics and geopolitics for the year to come. So join us there. Until then, remember the fight is coming. Be ready. Oh, is Dr. Fuller back? What are we going here? Are you back? I can't hear you, Dr. Fuller.
I am. I threw the dog outside and got the workers working. So.
Oh, fantastic. Look at that. Change of command. Here we go.
Apologize.
I was already signing out, so I'm so glad you're back.
I wasn't sure. Are we still broadcasting here?
We are. I was closing it down, but yeah, now that you're back, everything changes. This is fantastic. I'm going to jump ahead to Dr. Gordon Botson mentioned Peter Hegseth, and I was talking about him briefly. And since you didn't hear what I said, what are your thoughts on that pick for Secretary of Defense?
Oh, Hegseth? Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I follow. Actually, he's one of the few that I follow on Facebook, and he seems like a solid guy, at least in terms of his social media presence. But that's really all I know about him is his social media presence. He has some military experience. So
have you read any of his books?
I have not read any of his books.
I'm
not have to change that. But family man, military background, seems solid enough to me. But again, I don't know enough about him to say, oh, yeah, this is the guy. But again,
he did have a child out of wedlock.
He did.
While he was married.
Well, while he was married. Okay. Well, see now again. In the Trump administration, that's probably not the kiss of death.
No, it's not.
But again, a generation or two ago, it would have been. He would have been off the list right off the bat. So, does that preclude him from doing the job? Apparently not. Are there going to be? If Trump was big with the moral majority, if that was a big stumping point for him, I think he'd struggle with that. But he's largely just allowed them to sit in the background and support him quietly. So I don't know that this will be a problem. But again, I don't know enough about the man's policies or his life. It's strange. You take a guy who's a public media figure and put him in charge of the Department of Defense. But frankly, he couldn't do any worse than the last guy, right?
I mean, look, he's got what's he got? A degree from Princeton undergrad, and then he's got a graduate degree from Harvard, Kennedy School of Government. He was a field grade officer, 2 Bronze Stars. I'm overlooking the fact that he was a Fox News media darling. He's been in Iraq, been in Afghanistan. He's had the Department of Defense weaponized against him. They would not let him participate in the Biden inauguration because he had Christian cross tattoos on his right here. He's got also the Crusader God Wills It here.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, some things that I know in the Marine Corps, they would definitely turn to John Desai toward those kind of things. But at the same time, you do that, man, you're very unambiguous with where your values are. You know what I mean? Fair.
And as long as the values are of an acceptable type, I suppose we'll allow it. It begs the question, okay, where's the line drawn for, politically motivated tattoos, right? I mean, or governmental style tattoos, right? If he's got a hammer and sickle tattoo, is that okay? If he's got a swastika tattoo, is that okay? Yeah, he's got a Deus Volt, is that okay? So I understand the philosophical questions that might be asked, but he seems to have the okay of the president. So we'll see what happens. And again, we'll see if he can do the job.
Like I said, I watched him on Sean Ryan. I don't know if you've seen him on there yet.
Not one I haven't seen.
Yeah, it's good. I didn't see anything in there that sounded alarm bells. If anything, I was really impressed.
Well, good.
He's just a pretty talking head on Fox. Let's be honest. Handsome fella.
Well, if they want that, I look no further than Coffee with Rich.
Yeah, amen, brother. Between
you and Will Wood's hair, my God.
Oh my God, I know, right? So jealous.
I can't.
Yeah, he does rock a nice pair of silkies. My wife said so. There you go. Hence the extramarital affairs, or maybe singular. Yeah, so I think that's enough on him. Let's talk about the border czar, Tom Homan. What do you think about that pick?
It's fun because I always enjoy watching him testify in front of Congress because he just goes in there and his personality fits his appearance, right? He just looks like a bulldog, and then he goes in there and just goes after the people behind the dais, and that just cracks me up. Because he has his facts straight. He knows what he's talking about. He's been in the trenches, right? This is a man who's dedicated his life to this topic, and he's just not willing to tolerate foolish behavior. So from that regard, from what I've seen of him, I enjoy him, and I think he'd be a good pick, frankly. Again, how deep down the Trump loyalist hole he is, I don't know. If you surround yourself with those people that are afraid to tell you that the emperor's got no clothes, I become concerned. Yeah. So as long as he's not that guy, as long as he's still willing to say to Mr. Trump, look, this is broken. We can't do this. This is dumb. This is a bad policy on your behalf. Then we're fine. We're fine because I think he's a guy that will get in there. He, again, knows how the job is done. He knows how it functions. He knows where people can cut corners and where they'll try to cut corners. He knows what needs to be done. And as long as he's willing to tell Mr. Trump no, then I think we're fine. And I got to be honest, from what I've seen of Trump, he tends to put people in charge that he trusts to do the job, and then he lets them do it. And when they don't, he doesn't hesitate to can them. And I think that comes from a lifetime of being in the private sector and business, right? I don't have time to mollycoddle you. I don't have time to teach you how to do this thing. These are your marching orders. Go get it done. If you get it done, I'll leave you the hell alone. If you don't get it done, I'll chop you and I'll get somebody else.
Correct.
And those of us that have spent our life working for the government, we get very hinky about that. Oh my God, I could lose my job. Because, one thing you can say about a federal employee, we're tough to fire. Mm-hmm. But if you want things to be done efficiently, that's the way you do it. I trust you to do the job until I don't, right? And the moment I don't trust you to do the job, you won't have that job anymore.
Right.
And I think that combined with Elon Musk as the head of government efficiency, I think that'll be really interesting to watch happen.
Yeah, I'm excited about all this. And Don Bothwell says, with the DOD now failing its 7th audit, we need someone without a political background to drive home some accountability. He's right. And then Tom Homan, I'm an American citizen. You work for me, Tom, too. It says AOC, but I think it was another.
There's somebody behind that dais. That's for sure.
Yeah, but I love that. Him and AOC is just like, it is fun to watch. As you got one person who's woefully unqualified to even have a conversation about the border with a man like Tom Homan, and you got Tom Homan just taking her to task. It's absolutely beauty.
And when she latches onto the one little soundbite that she has and tries to beat him up on it, and he just eats her alive because he understands the topic, he understands the entire gestalt, the whole mosaic. He understands it because he's lived in it for decades.
Yeah.
And to have her come along and try to beat him up is just, again, Little League T-ball versus New York Yankees.
I agree. What do you think about Tulsi Gabbard as far as director of national intelligence?
That's an interesting choice. I remember when she was a Democrat. She was a Democrat when I was up on the Hill. And it was always struck me as odd, to see I think she was a lieutenant or a captain at the time. She's a pretty junior officer. And interesting to see that someone like that actively in the Guard, in Congress, but also, working for the commander-in-chief. I think she's one who, didn't leave the Democratic Party so much as the Democratic Party left her. Mm-hmm. And so I don't see her as an extreme right-wing, MAGA Republican. I don't see her as somebody who disagrees with a lot of what the Democrat base policies are. You see her as very centrist, which is appealing to me. I'm much more motivated by centrist politicians than I am by anything else. She seems very intelligent. So doing that job, I think she has a good understanding. She should be able to delegate and run an organization. Now, can she run an organization as big as the DNI has to run? I don't know. We'll see.
And what falls under the DNI is the DIA, the CIA, the NSA, National Geospatial, National Reconnaissance Office, the DOD, intelligence departments. This is
the FBI functions under there as well.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, there you go. So Huge job, but you know what? When you have the left, once she wasn't going to play the ball they wanted, because I think she was in line to be head of the Democratic National Committee, the DNC, and but she went against Hillary and went for and supported Bernie, and that was the end of that. Now, and then of course, what did the left do to her? They put 7 air marshals on her and put her on the no-fly list, and had Operation Quiet Skies following around. I mean, this is the right this is the right pick. If you've had it weaponized against you, Trump's going to give you a cabinet appointment so that you can go in there and change things. And Michael Gentili says, I love that Tulsi will run the TSA. And Craig says, in the private sector, if you can't do your job, you get fired. Surely government should work the same. It absolutely should. Matter of fact, there should be more accountability in the government than we have in the private sector, I would submit.
That'd be a lovely thing. It really would, because I can't tell you, and I'm sure you've had the exact same experience, how many times I've seen people in governmental positions that should be fired, just should never have this job, but you cannot get rid of them. You can't. It's next to impossible, and especially if they're anything other than a white male heterosexual.
Yeah.
You can fire those guys way easier than anybody else, and they're tough to fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it to a certain extent, but not to the extent that it's evolved to now. It's really out of control.
Now, one of my best friends, he was away last week at a conference in Vegas, and he's a GS-15 at the Department of Energy, and he's like, man, I got to go give a presentation to the union heads of this federal bureaucracy, and they're going to push back on some things I want to do, and it's going to be a knife fight and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's bullshit. This is what's best for the organization, and let me enumerate the reasons why. And you're trying to protect some old timer that's just waiting, sitting on his ass trying to get his pension. Like, I'm sorry, man, the safety and security of our nuclear assets are much more important than Carl, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when early days of the Bureau, first time I sat down at a Bureau computer, it was running, this is in early 98, it was running Windows 3.1, which at that point was almost a 10-year-old program. You couldn't buy it anymore. And that's what the Bureau was running off of. And I laughed when I sat down. I looked around at my colleagues it's my first day in the office, right out of the academy. I was laughing. I was like, okay, this is funny. You put this program on the new guy's computer. Ha, ha, ha. Where's the real program? And they're like, no, that's what we use. Yeah. Are you kidding me? You can't go down and buy this from the store. They don't sell this anymore. This is the FBI. What are we doing?
I know.
And within a year or two, the director had hired a new computer guy to be the head computer guy for the Bureau. And after a couple of years, he was touted as he's going to come in here and he's going to fix this and he's going to get us up and running. Okay. Within a couple of years, he resigned. Mm-hmm. And he had said early on in his tenure, he said, look, right now the FBI's computer system is a broken down Volkswagen bus on the shoulder of the information superhighway. He says, I might be able to get the bus back on the road. He said, but it'll never be a Lamborghini because the purchasing processes were so labyrinthian and so time consuming, and anything that he wanted to buy and install and trot out to the entire organization was just going to take years to do it under the best of circumstances. And his point was, look, by the time I do that, anything I put in will be outmoded. Mm-hmm. And this organization is simply too cumbersome, and it's too shackled by the labyrinth of federal laws and regulations governing purchasing and procurement and research that I literally can't get it done. And he got so frustrated within a couple of years, he just resigned with someone else.
James Webb was another one, very similar to that. When Reagan appointed him Secretary of the Navy, and James Webb, of course, was a Marine Corps officer in Vietnam, Navy Cross winner, etc. And he basically resigned. Couldn't get shit done.
Yeah, and part of that, but the point I'm making here is part of that is personnel as well, mm-hmm. because you have people that start out in this organization and they age and they mature in the organization, they grow up in the organization with the attitude that nothing happens quickly. Nothing gets done fast. Nothing. So why should I hurry? Why should I stay late? Why should I extend myself on a project? I mean, the FBI at one point trooped out a new way of doing things. They were updating the databases that we were using. We had one day where they shut the whole organization down. Everybody had to go to headquarters city and get trained for a day. And so, all of us in Vermont, we drove down to Albany, sat in an office. This was a room with a bunch of white guys, white shirts, red ties, dark suits, and we got a class all day on the new hotness trilogy. It's the new greatness. Oh, this is going to be good stuff. And they were teaching at the academy. Everybody was learning this new thing. Within 2 years, it was gone. And I don't mean just like it had died. It was gone. It failed miserably. I'm like, why isn't somebody in prison for this?
Mm-hmm.
But so you grow up in that environment. It's very, very tough in your 40s and 50s to suddenly become nimble, to suddenly become, we're going to make this happen right now, because the environment is such that just doesn't happen. So you get very cynical. By the time I was at the end of my career, they came out with the idea that we need to train our leaders.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be in a leadership position in the FBI, you've got to go to training. Okay, so I was at the firearms training unit, and they decided, okay, here comes the next 18 months. We're going to do this week-long course. Sign up for it. They passed out a sign-up sheet. Everybody sign up. You're a GS-14. You've got to take this course in order to hold your GS-14 and then move on. And it's a week-long leadership training. So I grabbed that document as soon as I got it. I signed up for the last week that was available, 18 months away. And people were like, what are you doing that for? I said, because I've been in this organization long enough to know this is going to die. And if I sign up for it now, I'll be on the list. That block will be checked. I said, but I'll never have to go, because in 18 months, the truth will have changed. And people laughed, haha. And guys signed up and went. And so the week of their life, they went off into the woods of Virginia and learned whatever they learned. And within 6 months, it was down to a 3-day class. 6 months later, it was down to a 2-day class. Then it became like an online course from your cubicle for 4 hours. And then it just quietly vanished.
Mm-hmm.
And so you spend 20 years in that environment, 15 years in that environment. Of course, you're just going to put your feet up and go, no, 3 years from now, if this is still around, I'll consider it.
Yeah.
And it makes for a colossally inefficient organization.
No, I saw it in the military as well. I want to take a couple of comments here. Guile says, I wonder if Trump can stop the war between Russia and Ukraine, if Trump can prevent the bullying of China over Asia. Those are the questions I keep hearing. Of course, Guile is over in the Philippines, and that's near and dear to his heart. That's his backyard. I think he's going to have a lot to – I think he can probably give Zelensky's going to be pissed off. NATO may not get what they want, but there's going to be some sort of concession. I would imagine Putin gets to keep whatever he captured in 2014, maybe a few other small battlefield gains in order to get this thing done. What do you think, Dr. Fuller?
Probably. I mean, I think the Chinese will probably just back off for 4 years, right? Because the way the Chinese approach things, 4 years is nothing. So they can tread water for 4 years and wait till the next guy comes in. It might be Gavin Newsom. If it's Gavin Newsom, they'll be like, ha, 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 the Pacific is ours. Why fight with Trump when you can wait 4 years and take the whole place without firing a shot? With Russia, I think Putin's relationship with Trump is vastly different than his relationship with Biden, if it even exists. And I think that, Putin's he's a savvy politician, right? We've talked about him on the show before. Mm-hmm. He knows what he's doing. He's been doing it a long time. I think he recognizes, predators recognize other predators.
100%.
I think he'll see in Trump a guy who understands he's a world superpower, who understands his military can eat Putin's military for breakfast. He understands that our economy makes his economy look like a small, sub-Saharan African nation. And Biden didn't seem to comport himself as though he understood that. Trump does. And I think Putin recognizes that. So I think Putin's going to be in a much more conciliatory mood when dealing with a guy who knows he has the biggest stick on the block and is not afraid to use it. And the beautiful thing about that, by the way, in the 4 years that he was a president before, he didn't start any wars.
No kidding, right?
He didn't have to, because, to use a metaphor I've heard before, daddy was home, mm-hmm. right? You can monkey around when mom's in the house and she's running the show. And you can maybe screw around on the edge of the thing. But dad walks through the door, he's like, oh boy. And people start to tighten up because they know that dad's going to come in here and start wielding the belt if he needs to. As a result, dad doesn't need to wield a belt.
That's right. Yeah, peace through strength is a real thing, man. It really is. Yeah.
It's a thing. I mean, it's a thing if you understand that the guy that's strong is willing to use it. You can have the greatest military in the world. If you're afraid to use it, or you're just philosophically opposed to using it, you might as well not have it.
And that's the only thing scares me as far as Putin is a savvy politician, no question about that. I agree with it. He has continuously drawn red lines. Where will he say, "Hey, I told you, don't do it," and he does something like a tactical nuke? And there was some retired military officer who was on Fox, and he was saying, is he going to do a tactical nuke? And the moderator, the host on Fox, is like, we both know this. It's not going to happen. We both know, General, that's not going to happen. I'm thinking, lady, do you have a crystal ball? Easy with that. It's never going to happen. Talk.
It's never going to happen until it does.
Until it does.
No one's ever going to kick in my door and rape and kill my family until it does.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And people that think that way, I find them to be an endorsement of my own military service and other people's military service and the efficacy of our law enforcement organizations and personnel, because they've never experienced anything catastrophically bad. Right. They've never been on the receiving end of carpet bombing. They've never been assaulted, raped, beaten, mugged. So they don't have that experience. It's so far outside their experience that they can't really get their head around the idea that it could possibly happen. And the only reason it doesn't happen is because of people like you, people like many of the viewers here on the American Warrior Show, that have kept it from happening, have kept it at such a great arm's length that they just don't have any kind of a visceral understanding of the damage it does. So they can come out and say things like, "Oh, that'll never happen," because it's never happened in your experience. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it can't happen. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't remain vigilant. We shouldn't shore the walls.
Yeah. Let's see. There's a couple of the comments here. Don Bothwell says there's a certain amount of comfort that comes from the stability of dealing with a person who says what they mean and means what they say. Open books are easier to read. Yeah. I had an incident recently. My father is in the hospital.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Congestive heart failure. So it's, I'll be going to the hospital to check on. He's been in there for a few days. Well, when he was first taken by ambulance over there, and I'll make the story as brief as I possibly can. I have his power of attorney for healthcare, and this petty tyrant that was at the front desk of the ER, she says, you can't go back there. I'm like, I've already been back here. I came to brief my wife on something, and I'm going back because my father is an 81-year-old man with congestive heart failure, and I am his power of attorney for healthcare decisions, and he is in a compromised state. I need to go back there to continue speaking to the doctor. No, you'll wait your turn, and you're fifth in line. I said, no, not going to happen, Linda. And
we'll go get security, Linda, because we're about to have a problem.
Yeah, she's like, I'll call security. I just leaned on the desk, not moving, and so she called security. And guess what? Security, as always, was a reasonable, rational actor who came up. Miss Amber came up to can I help you, sir? I'm like, absolutely. I told her, so 1 second. Yeah, the nurse says, of course you can come back. Come on back. But I mean, I think that this idea of I can't push back. Well, watch this. Of course I can.
And things get done, right?
Mm-hmm. And when I say I'm not moving, I'm not moving.
And look, there's a time to fight. I mean, you didn't armbar this woman, throw her on the ground, step on her head as you walked over her, right? So
no.
There's a way to do these things and to do it in a reasonable manner. And look, had it gotten to the point where she needed to get armbarred, well then, okay, but you're not making that decision. She is.
100%. So
and
and then we attack it the old black way, and that was as soon as my father's was in a good state. I immediately said, okay, who's my father's nurse? Okay, Nurse Betty. Nurse Betty, do me a favor. I need to see the patient's rights advocate for the hospital. Can you have her come down to this room, please? Do we have one of those? Yeah, you do. Go check. You have a patient. Say, oh, we do. Her name is whatever.
Never dealt with her before because nobody else knew that she even existed.
Yeah. So she comes down and I file a formal grievance. I'm like, just so we know, I'm prepared to escalate this as far as we need to go, Miss Jones. Understand? And she tells me the policy. I said, because if I find out that Tennessee has some really strong patients' rights laws.
Nice.
And I'm like, if I find out there's been criminal conduct, I will prosecute your reception.
This is all based on response of the lady at the front desk?
Yeah, because again, it's like you have a compromised patient who needs the one and only person who can make these decisions, and you barred him from entrance because you want me to wait in line for 5 people to get checked into the yard. Who you know how long that's going to take. And I say this as a precursor to talk about Vivek and Elon. And Elon Musk, I'm reading his book right now by Walter Isaacson. I highly encourage anybody to read it. It's fantastic to get to know the man.
Isaacson wrote a book on him. Really?
Yes.
Wow. I loved his book on Ben Franklin.
And Jobs. Yeah. He wrote, well, I read both of those books. So yeah, he's doing a fantastic job. But one of the things I'm finding out about him when he started SpaceX, the military has all these requirements for missiles, and NASA has all these requirements. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. It's like, throw this shit out, throw that out. What makes sense? So, this is kind of what we need. And what do you think about that pick of those two?
I find that really exciting. I got to be honest. I mean, I don't typically get excited about governmental policies and governmental changes because they all seem so glacial and largely ineffective. But given the track records on these guys, given the impacts that they've had, and just, I mean, look, whether you like Elon Musk or you don't like Elon Musk, you cannot argue the fact that he hasn't reset space exploration, which was largely dead in the United States. Mm-hmm. He has reset and created an industry around tunneling. I mean, he's taking tunnels from costing what, $1 billion a mile down to a couple tens of millions a mile. Mm-hmm. It seems like everything he's touched is just gone gangbusters. I mean, you look how he started. Look where he earned his fortune, right? It was PayPal, correct? He created PayPal.
It was a company before that, but yeah.
Before that, yeah. So, I mean, the guy is clearly an innovator. He's clearly an outside-the-box thinker. He's clearly brilliant. It will be a classic example of an unstoppable force hitting an immovable object when he gets into the U.S. government. Because, look, if you are making missiles and you've got your own company and you aren't dependent on NASA and you aren't dependent on the military to create things, then you can throw their rules and their regulations out the window because they're not laws. Mm-hmm. That's not the case when you're actually making internal changes to the U.S. government. So it will be very interesting to see. He'll be able to hack and slash policy all day long. Yes. When it comes to law, he'll have to try and railroad legal changes through Congress. Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit more substantial ask. And it may be the right thing. It may be something that's desperately needed. And the majority of Congress might well be behind him. But the way our Congress is set up, that people that have a problem with Trump can throw sand in the gears and slow down Musk as a way of getting at Trump and slowing his successes. Because God knows we wouldn't want the president of the United States to be successful, because then his party might win the next presidential election. Mm-hmm. Not because it might be better for the government, better for the country as a whole. But it will be very interesting to watch those two attack this entrenched problems that we have, these entrenched ideas that keep things from happening quickly in government. It'll be, if nothing else, it's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, to your point, for those, and I'm looking down the list of those that are still watching this morning, and they're mostly former government folks, but not everyone. So for those that don't know, like in the Marine Corps, in recruiting, where I spent a vast majority of my last decade, there's giant pubs that establish doctrine. I can willy-nilly disregard that all I want. There's no law that codifies that. That's just doctrine.
Good idea.
So we've got the volume 1 guidebook for recruiting operations. We got volume 3, volume 5. And if I stacked them, they'd be 5-6 foot high. I can kick that stack over all I want, but I cannot violate the military procurement manual, the laws. Now, the other thing I would say about the laws is Mike Styka is the guy who wrote most of the military procurement manual. And I just happened to see him at a conference one time, very old man, 30 years in the Marine Corps. And I said, hey, Mike, a lot of the stuff in the military procurement manual, Marine Corps Order Papa 1100.72 Charlie, is so vague and ambiguous that can you not do a better job of tightening it down for us? He said, the ambiguity is there for you, man. Yeah. That's your room to play with. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow. So I hope someone has that conversation with Elon. Like, you see a vague rule, then have fun with it. That's your the aperture can open up if you look at it that way.
That's the light under the door, you know. And
Yes.
I always said that about policies, you know. And I've done some consulting work with different companies, including some Fortune 100 companies that, you know, they say, well, our policy is this and this and this, and my pushback is always, okay, well, that's broken, and it's only a policy. You wrote the policy, rewrite the policy.
Right.
If the policy is preventing efficiency, then the policy has failed, and it needs to be updated. And I never try to throw rocks at the old policy. Look, I'm sure it had a reason when it was put in place, but those reasons are no longer applicable. And now this policy is a hindrance to success. So we need to fix the policy, change the policy, not just hit the policy. Oh, well, the policy says I can't do it. I can't do it. No. Now, if the law says you can't do it, different animal, different conversation. But if the rich brown corporation has a HR policy that says we can't hire people with a ponytail, and then Will Parker shows up and you want to hire Will Parker, but he's got a ponytail, well, don't make Will Parker shave his ponytail. Change the policy.
100%.
You know, change the policy. Because then you get a man with a ponytail and a spectacular mustache. And really, where's the argument against that?
Yeah, and one of the most well-trained men that ever walked the earth. So there you go. Well, kind of close on this, you know, on the Elon Musk situation here. One of the things that I really liked when his lieutenants would come and say, yeah, but this isn't just policy that SpaceX has to adhere to. You know, if we want this government contract, it's got to conform to this. He would say, who wrote that? And he didn't mean like, oh, NASA wrote it. No, I want the name of the freaking individual. I want the context of why. I want to know what belly button I got to push. And so I always thought that was a great point. And one of that we found when I was with the MEU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit, 26 MEU, they had a thing where we can't go X number, and I've mentioned this on the show at least one other time. We can't go further inland than X. And the MEU commander was like, so saith who? What do you mean I can't go? I've got all these assets. And they're like, yeah, but you can't. I mean, it's doctrine.
Pacific War, we only win.
That's exactly right. Because something like the old fuel farms could only pump gas so far, and one of the old trucks couldn't get whatever. And like, this is bullshit. We can do whatever we want.
Douglas MacArthur wouldn't let us do stuff that the Army was going to do. Yeah.
So be prepared to kick over the hornet's nest, I guess, is what I'm saying, especially when it comes to policy.
Well, again, we've talked before about how traditions are answers to questions we've forgotten.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I get it, and we can be guided by tradition, but that doesn't mean they're set in stone, right? It doesn't mean we can't advance the ball, right? Let's stand on the shoulders of those giants that came before us and move the ball forward, because that's what they were doing, and that's what they would want us to do.
Amen.
So let's do
it. The only thing I don't like two heads to the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. I would much rather have one of those men stand alone, because these are both billionaires. They're both big personalities. Elon Musk, according to the book, and I'm halfway through it, doesn't share power well with anybody. So I don't know how long that's going to last for it. It just blows into a million pieces.
Yeah, leadership by committee is never a good thing, right? The Romans showed us that, and we've learned it repeatedly since then. The more people you have in the decision-making process, the more diffuse responsibility you have. The buck can stop here. Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't know what the thinking is on that. Have you heard any of the thought process on why? No. Two heads.
The two smartest guys I can get a hold of. Let's get both of them.
Yeah, maybe.
And like you said, these are successful billionaires. They're probably both not willing to be the XO. Neither one of them wants to be the number two, the second banana. So how they divide up the workload will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, and Elon was ousted in a coup at PayPal, so I did not know that, having read it. So. And again, if you're interested in Elon, I know I am. I'm reading the book. It's fantastic. I didn't know he lost his first son, Denver, to SIDS. So he's going to be someone who's going to be big in American politics for the foreseeable future, certainly in this administration and maybe others. So I think it's a good idea to take a deep dive on that character there. Can he be president? Nope. He is a citizen, American citizen, as of 2014. But that is out. He's not a natural born citizen.
Nobody can be governor of California. That's been
Ooh,
done. That's been done before, right?
I like
But
that.
I'm not sure. Does he still live in California, or did he move to Texas?
Uh, in the book, I think he's moved to Texas. I know that he couldn't get his rocket stuff done in California. So he's in the book, he's now leased a property in Texas for like the rock bottom price of $48,000 a year. And he's like, it's got everything I need.
Right. And it's not getting the crap taxed out of it and restrictive regulations like happen in California.
Exactly.
And I don't have to have a particular gender makeup of my board of directors, and I don't have to have a certain number of underrepresented minorities and trans personnel and whatnot in my board of directors because somebody in Sacramento thought it was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't blame him. I mean, California's doing a great job of running people out.
Yeah. And the capital drain will eventually.
Native, by the way.
Say again.
So it says the California native.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Fuller, any other thoughts on cabinet picks before I let you resume your morning activities?
No, it's going to be an interesting time. I think these next 2 years are going to be very, very interesting. I'm just hopeful it stays peaceful and we can all get on with our lives. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think I voted for disruption. I mean, be clear, I did. I mean, I think that this is our last chance to save the Republic. And I know that sounds melodramatic, but I really believe it in my heart. It could be a false belief, but it's one that I do believe in. I mean, hell, a lot of people don't know this. When I was going to retire before this farm situation became, and I'm speaking to you this more from the belly of the Brown family farm, and I was going to leave the country, take the family and immigrate somewhere else. And this is probably the last from 2008 until 2012. Those 4 years was just looking for somewhere to go. I thought this country is unsavable because it's my opinion. And it just seemed to be getting worse. So I think this is it. And we either get it right now or we're doomed. And that will, I guess I could close with the thing that scares me is the replacement for Mitch McConnell. How the Republicans did that is anathema to the way it should be. They had a secret meeting. They put in a Republican loyalist, someone that Trump and his cabinets did not want. And he comes out saying, we're not going to let the Democrats thwart Trump's cabinet pick. We're going to make sure they get their day in court and that they're properly vetted. What he should have said was, we're going to make sure there's a recess appointment. We get these guys installed and moving. And then we'll do that at some later date. He didn't. So it's like, brother, you're getting in the way. So once again, I think he's going to fight the Republican Party just as hard as he has to fight anybody. And I could be completely wrong with that.
Well, I hope not. I hope not. Although I'm not opposed to that sort of dynamic as a general statement, making sure that we just don't go down a cult of personality with one person. Mm-hmm. But once it becomes a hindrance to progress, I think obviously we're going to have to answer that question. I would be interested when you get a chance, though, if you were to revisit your point scale on departing the country. So it's kind of where we are now. Because I know a couple months ago we'd blown through your
17
point, 17 on a 10-point scale. I kept expecting to see you, broadcasting from a small loch in Western Scotland. But I'd be interested if you'd revisit that in an upcoming show.
Yeah, I might do that tomorrow night when Will and I come on. Be fun to see. But, I didn't just vote for Trump as a person. I voted for the cabinet picks that I was certain he was going to make. And I want to be clear about that. Trump as a figurehead it could be anybody, it could be me or you. I want the cabinet that's going to get this done and restore. It reminds me of the scene in Gladiator. Rome will become a republic again. He's killing Commodus right before Commodus killed him. It ain't going to be you, buddy. It's going to be because I know that you're going to continue the same old.
Yeah, as long as we can divert off the DEI path that we've been on in the last few years and head towards a more centered, at least a more, curve this ship of state back towards the center line, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, Dr. Fuller. And that's a perfect place to leave us today. Thank you for being on the show as always. Check out the links in today's show notes to check out Dr. Fuller's amazing books. I've read them all, reviewed them all, and I highly recommend anything Dr. Fuller is doing. Thank you for being on, Dr. Fuller. And if you would, sir, take us out.
Thank you very much for having me on again, Rich. I always enjoy interacting with your audience, and it's a great group of folks. And as they all well know, the fight is coming. Be ready.